So I want to welcome everyone to Internet for your boat. And our goal in the session is to answer questions that boaters have about how to access strong, consistent, and fast connections to the internet, no matter where they are, whether that's tied up to a marina, cruising the coast, or if they're many miles out to sea. And our panel is very well versed to discuss this. They represent decades of marine electronics experience. They come from different perspectives in the industry: manufacturer, boat builder, dealer installer, and vessel security. I'm your host for the session. I'm Jim Fullilove, editor of Marine Electronics Journal. That's a trade magazine for members of the National Marine Electronics Association, which pretty much represents just about everybody in the industry. When I joined the magazine in 1997, the internet was in its infancy and something called Wi-Fi had just been invented. Lots changed since then. Let's meet the panel. Brian, will you lead off, please, and tell us a little about yourself?
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me on the panel today. My name is Brian Kane. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for GHOST, Global Ocean Security Technologies, founding partner of the company that we started in 2005, based out of Fort Lauderdale. We do yacht security, tracking, monitoring, video surveillance, acoustic deterrence, cloaking technologies, everything security and monitoring aboard yachts and commercial ships around the world.
Ken.
Yeah. Well, my company is Comar, and we're the representatives for KVH in Florida and up and down the coast. And in the past, and our customers are electronics dealers, boat builders, shipyards. So we bring the KVH product to them. And I'm a past NMMA, National Marine Manufacturers Association board member and Rep Association board member too.
Thank you. And Johnny Lindstrom.
Good morning. Afternoon for you folks. I'm on the West Coast, so it's morning for me. Johnny Lindstrom here. I work for Westport Yachts. I'm the systems product designer for all of our boats. That includes the entire electronic suite. So all of the navigation, communications, networking, blah, 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 all of those things. I, like Jim, have played with this stuff since before there was an internet, actually. And so I've had the opportunity to grow along with the industry and all of the various means of connectivity that we currently have available today, and look forward to this. It's obviously a hot topic. It's one of regular questions and that we all get regularly. So look forward to this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. John Thaw.
Hi, I'm John Thaw, the co-owner of Poseidon Marine Electronics here in the Palm Beaches. Been doing this since 1996 and have co-owned Poseidon Marine Electronics for 6 years now. Poseidon Marine Electronics basically specializes in marine and audio video electronics integration, installation, and service, both here in South Florida and really throughout the world wherever our clients take their vessels. And we service a wide range of vessels, ranging from high-end center consoles, custom sport fish, all the way up to 200+ foot mega yachts today.
Great. Well, thank you, panel. This session is scheduled to end at 3, but we can extend a little bit beyond that if there's interest beyond the questions we're going to ask the panel. And I would also ask the audience if you have any questions beyond what you hear is being asked by me of the panel. Simply go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's a Q&A button. Click on that. You can write in your question, and we'll see it, and we'll address those at the end of the session. So the first question goes to John Thaw. We are all used to 24/7 connectivity, no matter where we are on land, and now that goes for boaters as well. You want to be able to access the internet, to send and receive email, maybe listen to music, stream video. And the right solution to be able to do that really depends on several factors. And so, John, can you briefly explain some of the connectivity options that are available and the ones that are most popular?
Absolutely, Jim. what I generally do is separate the internet connectivity to two different types. The first, most important, most prevalent is at sea connectivity, which is both satellite and cellular LTE communications. The satellite can be either geostationary systems like VSAT or Inmarsat, and also right down to low Earth orbiting solutions like the Iridium and Globalstar handheld phones or terminals. The second means of connectivity is dockside, and primarily that's some type of marine Wi-Fi bridging to a shore-based broadcasted Wi-Fi in a marina, behind your house, in a hotel. And also something that we're starting to see more of is more of the marinas here in South Florida are actually allowing you to have cable modems as well, which is a whole nother section and basically ties into the vessel network the same way it would in your house.
Thanks, John. So Ken, what are some of the considerations boaters should be asking themselves when they're selecting a communication system that best meets their needs?
Well, Jim, thanks a lot for it's a good question. You need to keep in mind their cruising range. Number one, where they going to be running this boat? Is they going to be going 100 miles offshore, 10 miles offshore, or are they going to be predominantly going up and down the intercoastal? So what your cruising range is, what type of boat it is. Is it a sailboat? Is it a center console? On a bigger boat, you can put different solutions on it because you can fit larger antennas, for instance. The other side of it is to define the boater's needs. Are they going to be simply using it for simple email, or are they going to be expect to watch football game? Or what we found out recently in this time of pandemic times is we've got a lot of boat owners coming back and they're interested in, they're moving more of their business on their boat and they're trading stocks. So they want to be connected at a higher degree of connectivity and come up with the different solutions for those. So if you're dockside most of the time, that's, there's a set of solutions for that. Then it's also to remember if you're seasonal, if you're seasonal, you might want to have to suspend your service in the wintertime, right? So another factor, and reliability, there's a lot of solutions out there. There's a lot of different degrees of reliability. I'm sure John could speak to that. A lot of different solutions on them, many that work great in your house that won't work on your dock, And, a lot of folks, they say, well, we're going to pull up to our marina and, my marina's got Wi-Fi. When you get back to your marina Wi-Fi, and you find out, well, I can send an email, but I can't stream a movie and I intended to. And then your Wi-Fi at your marina, boy, it might be great on Wednesday afternoon, but then Friday night when the marina's packed, and all of a sudden your Wi-Fi is very, the reliability can vary greatly. So a lot of different options and a lot of different things to consider, especially the size of boat, vessel, and where you're cruising to. Yeah.
Great, good. Thanks, Ken. So let's drill down a little deeper into some of these considerations. And Johnny, here's a multi-parter for you. We've heard about Wi-Fi extenders. What kind of range can they give you? That's one question. Another one would be, what does the equipment cost? What is the equipment that you have to buy in order to set up a Wi-Fi extender system on your boat? And finally, what do you feel are some of the major pros and cons with adding Wi-Fi to your boat?
Thanks, Jim. I'm happy you give me the complex question right out of the gate. Actually, both Jonathan and Ken touched on a couple of the things there. The Wi-Fi, as most of us think of it today, is we go to Starbucks, we have our phone, and we're on the free internet at Starbucks or whatever. And that's similarly what goes on in boat marinas. They provide that capability. But unfortunately, your boat is the last one out on the dock, and it's a considerable distance away from where the Wi-Fi hotspot is, if you will. and you oftentimes don't, your laptop or your phone won't be able to communicate with that device. It can see it, but the signal strength is so low that it can't make the trip, as they say. So there's a thing called a hotspot amplifier or Wi-Fi amplifier. There's a number of companies that make them, and they basically hardwire a hotspot on your boat in simple terms. So this device acts as the receive and transmit section, and it usually plugs into a boat's existing network, or it repeats and provides wireless access on your boat through a wireless network that would be contained in your boat. Now, the good news is that they are generally universally, you can move around and they work pretty well. But the downside is, as Ken just pointed out, on Wednesday afternoon, when you're the only boat in the harbor, things work great. On Friday afternoon, when everybody else is there, now you're all sharing the same pipe. And so your user experience has dropped significantly. Then you have, of course, limited range. You're going to have to be relatively close to the marina. And you can improve on those things with some sophisticated antenna solutions and things that are available. But it's an in the marina kind of situation. There's no silver bullet for this deal, unlike your house, where you can have your cable operator or whatever bring you internet. And so for our boats, as you know, Westport, we build a big boat, and we provide 5 options of connectivity on all our boats as standard fit. And, one is cellular solutions, such as what Brian deals with. One is Wi-Fi. One is VSAT. One is fleet broadband, and one is, as John pointed out, shore. Because there are shore connections, either with Ethernet connections that behind the person's house, or we provide the ability for the cable modem application, which is becoming pretty common because it gives such great speeds at a decent cost.
I've got to apologize. I thought that Steve Gorman had dropped off. His icon dropped off my screen for some reason, but he's back. Steve, I'm sorry we didn't include you in the presentation. Can you give us a short take on your bio, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So my name's Steve Gorman. I'm with KVH Industries. I am the KVH Super Yacht Field Service Engineer. I'm based in South Florida. We have a Davie office here, and I support the KVH manufacturer side of things. I work for KVH directly. We are a manufacturer of satellite communications and satellite TV tracking systems for the marine industry.
Thanks very much. We had
You want me to finish answering your 3 questions, Jim?
You did pretty well with that, Johnny. We'll invite you back.
I left out the cost part. And, generally speaking, I think the products that are available out there, and they range, and obviously they range in price for a number of reasons. I think they're somewhere between $800 approximately to $1,500–$1,800, depending on the level that you're getting and the capability of the system. Some of them are higher power, so they have longer range. Some have better network, better antenna systems associated with them, so that gives you some better range. Some of them are multi-band, meaning 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, which is very critical. If any of you, all of you have, I know because I see you there, been at boat shows or crowded marinas, and you go on and you have 300 hotspots or something, and everybody's trying for the same thing. So the ability to have the multi-band and get up into the 5 gigahertz, don't confuse that with 5G, that'll be a Brian question, but to get into the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi range, it's less crowded, there's more space, there's more spectral efficiency, all that stuff, sorry. And you get much better performance. So those are the things to take into consideration when you're trying to work that out.
Well, I think there is a fair amount of confusion out there, unless you're very involved in the marine electronics industry, about what the difference between LTE and 5G is. And And Brian, can you explain that? What are some of the considerations with bringing LTE on board? What is it? What's 5G?
Yeah. Well, we've been, as you know, Jim, we've been streaming video off boats for about 13 years now. We started we were doing it on 3G, and we were streaming it to clients' Blackberries. So we've seen a lot of progressions of various, connectivity over the last 13 years. And, generally I see that, it's an Internet of Things age. Everyone wants smart devices everywhere, and 5G is going to change a lot of things, but I see it working in concert with LTE. Not being the primary. I think LTE is going to be the go-to for boaters, because let's face it, a lot of these 5G towers that are coming up all over the place, these nodes are focused on population density, where there's more people, more smartphones, where you're not going to see as good connectivity offshore with 5G, especially it's a different frequency, and the range is not as long. So I think you're going to see LTE being the predominant solution for boaters for the foreseeable future. So it's important that, for instance, you have a fixed LTE module on your boat if you want to have cellular connectivity, that has the ability to tie in with cellular Wi-Fi and have its own security within the Wi-Fi on your cellular network, because boaters want to have their own secure source on board with cellular. So it's all about trying to figure out what your use case is. Marina Wi-Fi does a great job, but cellular LTE is where it's going, and I don't see 5G being too relevant for boaters when outside of the marina or anything greater than 4 or 5 miles offshore.
Yeah, and range is a thing that seems to be almost a hidden subject. I mean, I know when I've gone online to look at some of the products out there, it's often difficult to know just how much range you can get out of one system or another. It often depends on so many other things, and I guess the manufacturer is just reluctant to pin himself down, knowing that it's dependent on conditions, cell tower, and so forth. Yeah.
And it's worth noting, like with regards to LTE, what your use case is going to be with, we always have horror stories of, some the boats in Nassau and the kids on board are doing online gaming. All of a sudden they get a $10,000 bill from their cellular provider because they're operating data in a foreign country over cellular. And, it happens a lot. Or, captain next door on the boat next door to you is downloading videos all day long, and all of a sudden you get hit with that bill because it's very expensive over cellular, and especially when you're operating outside of the footprint. So like here in the US, we see oftentimes a lot of clients in the Bahamas that bring the boats over there, but all of a sudden they have a US SIM card provider, a cellular provider, and they get to the islands and it's all of a sudden dumbed down. They don't have nearly as much bandwidth because native cards kind of get priority. So oftentimes we tell customers to, if your boat's staying in a port in a foreign country for a foreseeable amount of time and you need cellular connectivity, oftentimes it's good to get a local SIM card to have better connectivity and not get anything, not have bandwidth restricted on board. And also making sure you have a LTE device that has a certified IMEI number, which is really important. So the cross references with all carriers, because you try to go to, we deal with this every single day. You try to go to like a provider, say, I got a system for my boat that I need to get internet for, and they look like you have two heads because all they know is iPhone or Android. So, having a product that has a certified IMEI numbers that cross references in their system is really important, as something to keep in mind. So,
yep. Good, thanks, Brian. Steve, I've got a question that's right down your alley, and that is VSAT. Can you explain just what exactly is VSAT, and share some of the pros and cons that people may want to know about the system when they're considering putting one aboard their boat?
Sure. So first off, VSAT stands for Very Small Aperture Terminal. So back when VSAT first started, the the antenna systems were very large. So a VSAT or a small aperture terminal was considered anything under 3.8 meters. So that's a very large dish. In our day, in our time now, with the vessels, we're able to do it on a much smaller tracking system. So on land-based, the satellite dish can pretty much stay stationary because we use geostationary satellites. So the satellite's in the same part of the sky at all times. So we can pretty much know where it is, point the dish there. On a vessel, the vessel's always moving. So it requires an antenna system that's capable of tracking these geostationary satellites while the vessel's moving and rocking and rolling. So with satellite, we're able in today's age to reach speeds of what we consider LTE speeds. When this first came out, you were lucky to get 4 kilobits of speed out of the satellite. Now we're reaching upwards of 100 megabits per second of data speed capable. So similar to what you're getting in cellular in most cases. So there's pros and cons to it. Obviously, this goes a little bit further than what you can do with, say, Wi-Fi inside of a marina or cellular because they're limited on range. So Wi-Fi, obviously capabilities, if you're in a marina that has good Wi-Fi, great. As soon as you start moving out of that marina, you're gonna lose connection. Cellular's the same way. As long as there's a tower nearby, you're gonna have a connection. Once you go further offshore, you lose connection with that tower. With satellite, it's pretty much worldwide in most cases. With VSAT, there is some limitations based on the size of the antenna, but the pros are that we're not tied down to a location. We can move across the open ocean and still get communication, whether it be voice, data. As I said, we're able to stream video now. So a lot of those capabilities that Ken and John talked about and Brian with capabilities of being able to stream things like this, Zoom, be able to do meetings. You can do that on satellite now. Obviously, the cost is much greater than doing it with cellular. There's more involved with the equipment and the installation. You have to keep aware of what's available. But the nice thing is the antennas are getting smaller. The capabilities are getting to where you can put it on a lot smaller vessels. Again, the capability is going to vary depending on the size of the equipment. So the smaller antenna, it's not going to perform the same way as a larger antenna. That's why you'll see a lot of vessels with multiple antennas. Some of those antennas are VSAT tracking systems. Some of them are TVRO, but sometimes it takes multiples because they're using more than one service or something similar to that.
So TVRO, TV receive only.
Correct. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve. If you're.
So basically, you know, the things that come into mind with VSAT obviously is the equipment costs are much greater than, say, Wi-Fi expanders or cellular systems, and the airtime plans. But the nice thing is it doesn't matter if you're moving from Florida to the Mediterranean, you don't have to switch SIM cards. The service can, in most cases, the service provider is the same person that you had. So everything follows you, it tracks the system, it switches satellites automatically. So there's not a lot on the technical side that the customer has to deal with when keeping that online.
You may be the best one to answer this next question, but I'll throw it open to the panel. I mean, cost for VSAT is, I mean, that's obviously a question that a boater would have. And then there's installation costs. There's also lease cost, routing, the cost of usage. What is lease cost routing?
Well, I'm going to start with it real quick, and I'm sure John and some of them can answer more. But least cost routing is most vessels, of the larger vessels, are going to have more than one system. Most are going to have, you know, Wi-Fi capabilities, cellular, and then the vessels that are going to go further offshore or make some sort of crossing, whether it be crossing to the Bahamas or an Atlantic crossing over to Europe. So they require more than one service. So least cost routing is a way of taking multiple services and looking at it's a third-party equipment that's able to look at what's going to cost the least for data communications. And if those services are available, it's always going to try to use the device that's going to keep the least cost involved. So when you're close enough to shore, you're in the marina, it's usually going to switch over to Wi-Fi. Once you pull out of the marina, it's then going to eventually switch over to cellular. Once you're out of cellular range, it's going to see that it doesn't have those connections and going to switch to some type of satellite communications. So least cost routing is just kind of a switching system. It's usually built by a third-party vendor. Some manufacturers are now starting to incorporate that into their own software. So some of the terminals, whether it be a VSAT terminal or a cellular terminal, even some of the Wi-Fi terminals sold out there today, have capabilities of that built into the software.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to comment on that?
Sure. Well,
Go ahead,
yeah.
Johnny.
Go, Johnny.
Okay, John, thanks. So yeah, least cost routing is not new for those of us who remember the days of MCI in our telephone systems at home, our landline phones. That's where least cost routing essentially started, or back in the T1 tie line days and things like that. It's been in existence for a long time. My personal preference is for a human being to make those decisions. And as someone that's made their living in this worldly, wizardly world of technology for a long time, I still like human beings to make some choices. So we do provide all of those options, but we would rather see again, this is just a personal preference in the way we build our boats. We want a human being to make those choices, because we've experienced those situations like Brian was identifying, where a kid's been gaming all day, and you get a $10,000 bill. I have a boat right now sitting off the Keys that is going to experience a very enlightening day when they get back to shore, using one of Steve's products and very happily streaming videos on board for an extended period of time. A very, very, very significant amount of data, because somebody made a bad choice. So we want a human being to be involved so that we can let them make those choices. I do the same thing with autopilots. I'm not a fan of route following either. I want a human being to decide that it's time to change course. Look out the window.
Got it. John, did you have something to add to that?
I'm in complete agreement with Johnny Lindstrom on that. We prefer intelligent routing. It's part of the onboard training when we deliver a network to a vessel, and how to actually control the connectivity, and what the pluses and minuses are each service that they're going to use and when they're going to use it. Yeah, basically just teach them how to use their primary systems and the backup plans for their backup plans. That way, no matter what the application, whether it's a weekend warrior over to the Bahamas for a week, or a 200-foot yacht that's in heavy charter use in the Med, you got to have some basically multiple options depending on where they are and what they're doing, and what the least cost is a lot of times factors in, but a lot of times it's what's the best connectivity, and they need to make that selection on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes it changes on an hour to hour.
So if I were in the market for a system, a VSAT system, and I had some teenage kids who did stream a lot of videos, played a lot of games, when we're pretty far offshore, what can I expect the bill to look like at the end of that month?
Scary.
Can you be a little more specific?
I'll give you a perfect example. About 4 or 5 years ago, we built a large sport fish boat with a client, and he was asking how much would it cost to watch a movie on Apple TV. And I explained to him, basically that back then it was about 3,000 gigs of data, or 3 gigs of data. Basically, on I think he had a V3, but it may have been a V7 KVH antenna. Basically, he was looking at about $3,000 to watch that movie, and he, of course, told me, "You're joking." I promise you, I'm not. So the first week, the boat left Palm Beach, went to Ocean Reef, and about 10 o'clock at night, a little bing from an email showed up on my iPad, and warning this boat had used excessive data. And I think, 10 o'clock, I'm going to call and see what they're doing. And the owner answered the phone. He goes, "I knew you were going to call me." He goes, "You saw that email, didn't you?" And I go, "Yeah, I mean, you've already used $3,500 worth of data." And he goes, "Well, we watched the movie. I wanted to see if you were right." I go, "Okay." He goes, I'm good with it. It'll be the last one we watch, but you were right." And that was it. And that's one of the more tame ones, because there are some where the bills get ridiculous and they didn't even realize. And it's something you need to be cognizant of every day when you're using services that are metered.
Yep.
That's why a lot of people prefer to go with something that's a monthly bill with a max, so that or no max, so they know they're not going to run into trouble.
Yep.
We have a lot of clients, especially the ones that are heavy users of data, that are buying huge blocks of data or buying a connection with no max.
Okay, so let's.
Oh, sorry.
Anybody else?
Yeah, it's good. This is the common conversation, and we're so accustomed to, right now I'm sitting in my house and I've got a cable modem and I got, 100 meg connection that cost me $50 a month. And it works great. 100 meg connection on a boat is going to cost more than $50 a month, because number one, there's not as many users to spread the cost of the infrastructure out. Number two, the infrastructure is flying around in space, and it costs a lot of money to get it there and keep it there and maintain it. So you take this very, very high cost infrastructure and you provide it to a very small market. Obviously, it's going to cost a heck of a lot more money. And that's the constant argument. Why can't I get this on my boat? I got it at home, and the answer is because your boat isn't plugged into the wall. Your boat is a radio device by itself. To share a similar experience to Jonathan, we have one of our customers, one of our larger boats, is a pro football team owner, a Super Bowl winning pro football team owner. And he wanted to be able to stream his team anywhere he was on his boat. And that was the requirement in the initial purchase contract. And so, of course, that comes to me to figure that out, which I said, okay, well, here you go. And I presented it. And it was effectively going to cost him approximately $30,000 a month to do that. He decided it wasn't that important to stream anywhere in the world to watch his team play football. So that's the reality. Some people will pay that. He wasn't one of them.
Right. Yeah. Just be judicious.
I was gonna say, this day and age too, there's a lot more tools to manage your data, to manage what you've signed up for. On a KVH unit, you have a My KVH. You get alerts where you get alert. And the cost has come down drastically, even just in the last year with the advent of HTS. The costs have dropped. They've dropped more than half in a year. So it's changed a lot. It's easier to manage than it ever has been before. And there's there's also unlimited data options now, which we've never had before, that we offer now with high speed, unlimited data, which is typically on a larger yacht, maybe on a charter vessel. But on a charter option now, if somebody's going to go on a boat for a week, at the very day one, they'll know exactly what it's going to cost. It was unlimited data for that week. So we've been able to listen to the industry and kind of tailor solutions that really work and that fit the industry now. So the surprise bill really shouldn't happen, and not that it won't, but really there's a lot of checks and balances now. So that should be a rare, very rare event.
So the message to the boater is ask questions. Ask questions. Right. I'm almost inclined not to ask this next question, but I'm going to, just because there may be some spots that we didn't fully address. But anyway, Brian, to you, some boaters may question why they need a communication system when they have a cell phone aboard. Can you explain the differences in reach and coverage between a cell phone, a Wi-Fi extender, and a VSAT product?
Well, for one thing, their cell phone's not on board when they're not there. So having communication off the boat that is stable and consistent is really important. To all the gentlemen's earlier points, download your videos, play the games when you're not in a marina Wi-Fi, whenever possible. Do that stuff before you go offshore. Because marina Wi-Fi is great, and it does a great job when you're sitting at the dock and you're inside a marina Wi-Fi range. But don't expect that to continue any place outside the marina. You know, with regards to cellular, we are using LTE routers. Sometimes most of our clients that are staying within 4 or 5 miles of shore are fine just having an LTE router on board that, and depending on where they are, of course, they maintain a pretty good connectivity. But I mean, for instance, you know, we do a lot with sheriffs and police departments around the globe with streaming video off their boats for situational awareness. And I mean, you know, over cellular, if you have the proper antennas mounted on the hard top and boosters, you're able to get sometimes up to 20 miles offshore in certain spots. But then, of course, outside that, we're going to be reliant on VSAT and streaming it off at, you know, our cameras and security stuff off at such a rate that it's not going to eat up a lot of bandwidth. So, you know, for instance, we have a lot of cruising clients and even commercial ships where they want to use a VSAT to stream video off and in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and they want to, who's at the helm, what's in front of the boat, what's behind it, and they just log in when they need to, and they're only using a certain amount of data when on demand. So, you know, generally, back to the question, it's if the boaters are operating within, you know, within about 5 miles of shore, they're going to be fine on LTE in most areas. Outside that, if you need consistency and reliability offshore, you know, that's when you switch over to the VSAT.
Steve, back to you, and this covers a little ground that we've been over, but that's okay, because I'm sure there's more that we can sweep out from the corners. But that's any common misconceptions that boaters have about getting internet at sea, whether it's cost or coverage or amount of data usage.
So probably the biggest one is the amount of data usage. And, you know, when you approach a customer or you approach a boater and you ask them, what is your usage going to be for? What do you plan on doing with it? You know, most will tell you, oh, I just plan on sending a few emails, checking the weather, maybe a little bit of communications. But what most people don't factor in there is, A, they're going to do a lot more than that. We live in that day and age where data is everything. You know, we have smartphones, iPads, computers, all our devices, including all the TVs and the and the MFDs on the boat, all the multifunction displays on the dash, all of them look for internet. They're all looking for Wi-Fi. They all want to reach out to the internet, and every one of them has a program, an app running in the background. And all those apps want to do is upload into the sky, and they want to download updates. So the amount of data usage is probably the biggest one that people forget about, because it's going to be more than you think, number one. And it does require the boater to be actively involved in monitoring that. So we heard some horror stories earlier with the guys talking about different vessels. And like Ken said, there's ways to deal with it. All of us are putting tools into our systems that help you control your data usage. I don't care if it's cellular, I don't care if it's Wi-Fi or VSAT. You do have to take some control of it. And it requires you to it could be a third-party piece of equipment, or using the tools that are already built in the software that allow you to control the data. We have things like category controls built into our systems that allow you to turn off certain features so that we don't have problems like Johnny's talking about. If you don't want people to stream on the vessel, we can turn categories off that allow you to stop any type of streaming data to go through the system. We can turn off gaming. You know, the grandkids come on board the boat, and the first thing they want to do, I don't care where they are, is game. Whether they're gaming on their phone, they're gaming on their iPad, or they're gaming on a console hooked to the TV, that's going to use a lot of data. Because most of them today, when they're gaming, are video gaming. So they're playing with 5 other guys via video and communicating just like we are now. So there's a lot of data usage that people don't realize, and you can control that. I don't care if it's VSAT or cellular. You have to be able to take control and understand those things. Ken brought up the fact that now there's a lot of manufacturers, including KVH, offer plans like the Elite plan that allow you to pay a weekly or monthly rate for your service, know exactly what you're going to spend. So at the end of that month or the end of that week, you know what your bill is going to be. And it allows you to do things like streaming or gaming if that's what you want to do. The thing that you have to remember is when you're on that vessel, whether you're using cellular or Wi-Fi, everybody on that vessel is sharing that bandwidth. So the more people that are streaming, the more people that are gaming, it is going to affect the bandwidth or the speeds on the vessel. So again, it has to do with managing what you're doing. It's not unlimited like in your home where you plug into the wall and everybody can be streaming and everybody can do the same thing and pretty much not see any effect of it. It's not going to be the same on the vessel. There is going to be effects, and you do have to take some responsibility and some control of that.
When boaters do their research for a VSAT system, they're going to come across, a short dictionary of terms that can be a little confusing. Without getting too techie, Steve, can you give us sort of the layman's definition of C-band, KU band, and KA band in the real world? What do they mean? Why do they matter?
So all of them really is basically a band is a frequency. So we use different frequencies, just like cellular and anything else. Depending on the frequency will depend on the service. So most VSATs today use either KU or KA, but we also use what's called C-band. C-band is a shorter, lower frequency, wide band that allows for longer range. It's not as affected by things like weather or things like that. So the coverage area of C-band is much greater. But on average, most vessels, most leisure vessels out there are going to use either KU or KA when they're using when you're talking about VSAT. And those frequencies are higher than C-band. They can transmit a lot more bandwidth than C-band. Most of the people that are on the larger vessels, that when they get to the more towards the poles and things like that, they're on C-band. So the amount of bandwidth they're getting, the amount of data speed basically they're getting is going to be much less. But when you get into KU and KA, which are higher frequencies, they're going to be allowed, that's where you're going to get the higher speeds, the LTE capabilities. They can be a little bit more affected by weather conditions. So that's why systems like KVH, we have a system that has both KU and C-band built in. So when the vessel reaches an area where either the KU is too affected by weather or conditions, or it's outside of the KU coverage, it can automatically switch to C-band. And other manufacturers do that, but that requires a much larger system or two systems in some cases. Some people will have a C-band and some people have a KU or a KA band. You're going to see a lot more systems that are switchable between KA and KU. Probably right now the most popular on VSAT is KU, and then KA is up and coming. A lot more vendors are starting to use KA band in their systems.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Johnny, can you tell us why people buying new boats may want to have a VSAT installed as part of the new boat package rather than installing one later?
Okay. Well, I can, Jim, we've known each other for a long time. You know, my previous life, I actually was a marine electronics dealer like Jonathan is down there. And most of the work done was on pre-built boats. So now, of course, I work for a boat builder, and putting things on boats as they're being built is a very different world. It's much, much easier. But so generally speaking, you buy a car. You generally buy the car, you get the floor mats, you get the stereo in at the dealership and all those things. And so when you get the car, you drive the car away and you use the car. You don't generally want to take your brand new car and go take it over here and have somebody with the Sawzall start cutting holes in things and ripping your headliners out and all that other sort of stuff to put on these newer systems. So I think that's probably the primary driver of that sort of thing, is it gets it done. So when they get their boat delivered, they have a complete working boat, which of course is Westport's hallmark is, we deliver with all those systems operational, pre-tested, and, factory authorized installation, all those kinds of things. So I think a lot of people are doing it in that way. It just makes for a single transaction in many times rather than multiple transactions. And, Jonathan could probably speak to that as well. But I'd like to, if I may, just real quickly touch on something that Steve was just saying about the number of people. And I had an experience recently at home. My internet was slow. And I'm like everybody else, I don't like that. And so I said, well, John, you know how to do this. What's the problem? So I interrogated my system. I had 11 things online. I was the only guy in the house. That's the Internet of Things for you. You got to manage what you got going on. So there was 11 things using my internet, and I was the only guy there.
Yeah.
So printers, TVs, it was the list. I said, what the? So I went around and I disabled all those things, and then all of a sudden my internet just started working a lot better. I don't know. So yeah, that goes back to that human being being involved in the monitoring.
Right. Yeah. Good point. Well, John Thaw. So Johnny kind of handed it off to you. From the perspective of a marine electronics dealer, how about installing a VSAT system on a boat that's not new? Does that present a particular problem?
Well, I mean, the biggest issue is really something of where you're going to put it and how you're going to integrate it with the existing systems. It's great when a high-end boat manufacturer with a good OEM electronics program installs in the factory and you get a turnkey solution. But if we're all honest with ourselves, there's a lot of boat builders around the world that really shouldn't be offering a turnkey solution up to the experts. And, you know, you're able to get a much more customized, tailored system to fit the needs of that particular owner. I mean, if there's anything, entertainment and communications on yachts is a very personal thing to the owner, and especially when there's a large crew involved, or if they're involved in chartering where every week there's a whole new group of end users that are cycling through the boat. And I think a lot of the higher end electronics dealers are in a better position to tailor the solution on the average yacht. I mean, it's one thing if the boat's coming from Westport or Fedship. It's another thing if it's coming from a startup builder in Italy or in Turkey or China. They don't necessarily have the wherewithal and the experience to deal with it. You know, one thing, you know, with my company, we're averaging about 25,000 man hours of onboard service a year. We see a lot of different problems and learn how to diagnose those problems and learn how to modify our installations constantly to work around those problems so they don't pop up again and again. A lot of times the boat builders aren't the servicing entity once the boat's been delivered to the end user, so they don't realize they keep repeating the same issues. And that's the biggest difference.
I'm going to skip by the next question, which we did answer earlier in the discussion. It had to do with some of the high data usage programs like Zoom and Skype and so forth, and the speeds and all that would be necessary in order to propel those systems. So moving down to one that's, I think, probably a question that's on the minds of more than a few boaters, and that's to Ken. Are there different connectivity solutions for different types or sizes of boats? And what I mean by that is sailboats versus powerboats, maybe fishing boats versus cruisers. And what type of equipment should they choose?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now there's several different options with smaller vessels, right? And number one, we've been talking a lot about LTE1 and on different sized boats. So if you're, you know, your choices once your boat gets over 35 to 40 foot, that gives you widens your range of how far you can go offshore. But you know, a sailboat that's you know, again, it's your cruising area. Are you pretty much cruising up and down the intracoastal, you know, and occasionally fishing offshore? You know, maybe LTE is enough for you. The challenge is, though, you know, as we see, is, you know, a new boat, you know, someone who picks up their new 35-foot boat, large center console. The expectation is that, well, I'm going to have connectivity like I do at home, and boy, they can. Or somebody buys a new 40-foot center console. You certainly have that, but it comes with a cost. And then you have that trade-off that they're going to have to make at that point. So, you know, and the other piece is to always remember is how reliable it is. You know, we talk about being at the Wi-Fi at your marina is great, but Wednesday it might be good, and Saturday morning when everybody's downloading the weather, it might not be that good. And the same thing when you're offshore. Fishing 5 miles offshore. Maybe you're in the Gulf Stream. Maybe you're deep dropping. People are trolling for sailfish and dolphin in Florida. At that point, maybe your cell phone itself. Well, at 5 to 10 miles, those speeds really deteriorate a lot. And then if you had an LTE unit, something with up on your tower that get added range and a modem in that, well, then all of a sudden, boy, maybe you are getting 10 miles and you're going to get the speeds. But again, you're not going to be paying $10 a month for that, like you would, or $20 a month on a standard cell phone plan. So again, it's the size of the vessel, where are you going, what's your cruising range, but up to LTE units, getting folks up to 10, 15 miles, even up to 20 miles certain areas offshore. It's a pretty powerful solution for a small boat.
So, John, back to you. We talked about you and Johnny Lindstrom talked about installation considerations with VSAT. But what about some of the other systems, or if there's anything we left out about VSAT? Now's a good time. But what are some of the considerations that owners ought to ask themselves and then ask the dealer in regards to installation of the other systems, whether it's signal boosters or hardware or software?
Well, there's a number of factors that are going to determine the success of the installation and the operation of the whatever connectivity you select. And I mean, the first primary one that comes to my mind is just like the real estate business. It's location, location, location. There's a lot of other systems and parts of the boat that can affect VSAT or cellular or even marina Wi-Fi. There's concerns with blocking the antenna when it needs a line of sight to a satellite. There's also very serious concerns with interference from things like radar and other satellite systems, other communications on boats that can interfere with LTE and satellite communications. Beyond that, there's also other RF interference from machinery, gyro compasses or gyro stabilizers, audio video equipment on the boats that we've always seen affect communications. Beyond that, trying to shorten the RF cables on things like satellite and cellular and Wi-Fi. Some of these systems are very limited in how far you can run RF cables, so it's important to find a good place for the antennas and the below decks equipment in close proximity of each other. And then, basically the power that you're feeding these systems to. Again, with RF interference, the key is controlling and delivering clean power to the systems.
So let's take this a little further, and that has to do with something you mentioned, John, which is blockage. Steve, can you explain what that is? And again, in understandable language, and what's the best location for a communication system on a boat? Does it depend on the size of the boat?
Sure.
Can I jump in there just a second, Steve, before you start? As I indicated at the beginning, folks, I apologize, but I have something at 12 o'clock that I have to, another web event that I'm scheduled for. So I'm running up against that hard stop. And I want to thank you all for letting me participate and appreciate it. And we'll see you next time around. Good to see all you guys.
Thank you very much.
Johnny.
Thank you.
So in answer to your question, like John was just explaining, there's a lot of factors that go into placement of these antennas and systems. And it doesn't matter if it's a VSAT, a cellular antenna, a Wi-Fi extender, blockage comes into play. A lot of these vessels now, they're using carbon fiber and masts and things like that. So those type of things can cause blockage, some worse than others. It's one thing when you have a fiberglass structure versus an aluminum or steel structure, and then you get into carbon fiber. So all those can cause blockage, whether it's cellular, Wi-Fi, or VSAT. We talk about blockage with VSAT with our antennas. It could be another antenna system sitting right next to it. It could be a radar that's on a mast a little bit higher above it. All those can cause blockage because with satellite communications, we have to have a direct view eyesight of the satellite. It's not like GPS where we have multiple satellites up there and it's receiving signals from multiple satellites at the same time. VSAT is very precise. We're tracking one satellite and we have to have a direct connection, a direct view of that light or that satellite for our connection. If that gets broken by something in between it, it's going to cause blockage. The good thing is most of our systems have multiple satellites. So when you see a vessel where they have a large mast, or even these ships, because we do a lot of commercial applications, once it goes into blockage, we're able to program the system to know it's in blockage and go look for another satellite that's in open view. So when you're doing these installations, you have to take that into consideration. There's always the best position. Obviously, we want to be in the very center of the boat, up high with no blockage, but let's be real, on a vessel, that's very difficult because real estate on a vessel is very limited. We're trying to put more and more systems on these vessels. So it all comes down to play on what's best case. And then you also have to deal with builders because they're more concerned about aesthetics. How does the vessel look? There's a design to that vessel. Now you're going to stick these antennas and these domes on there. Does that look good to them? Well, you have to weigh the difference between performance and aesthetics. But you really have to realize when you choose one way or the other, it is going to affect, you know, the opposite side. So when you're more concerned about aesthetics than the performance of that system, whether it's a cell antenna or a satellite antenna, there's going to be effects to that performance.
We're getting close to the 3 o'clock unhitching hour, but I want to ask one more question, and then hopefully we will have time to pick up a few of the questions from the audience. We've got about 17 or 18 questions, so we're not going to be able to get to all of them. But one question that I feel is pretty important is the issue of cybersecurity. Certainly a big concern at home and in business. And the question is, should boaters be concerned that a virus that they may inadvertently download from the internet may worm its way into an onboard system and cause havoc? Other than advising them not to open unknown attachments, how do they protect themselves?
Well,
So, round robin, who would like to take that?
I'll start with it because cybersecurity isn't just about viruses, because that's obviously an attack, but cybersecurity has to do with somebody being able to take control of whether it be your communication systems or actual systems on the vessel that are running the vessel. More and more vessels, all these new vessels, just like your car, is all interlinked, you know, to the systems, and all of them want to reach out for communications. So cybersecurity is a very critical thing in this day and age, and all manufacturers, and carriers, VSAT and cellular, have to be aware of it, and we're all putting in protection against that. We're putting layers of protection to make sure that nobody's able to come in through that system, not only to use your data and maybe cause high bill, but to be able to control anything or get into your system. So cybersecurity is something that everybody has to take seriously. It's not just talking about somebody accidentally downloading a virus. It's more about something taking control of your vessel, especially in today's age with commercial vessels. These things are run by communications. You know, there's things that are operating on those vessels that somebody remotely is controlling. So the last thing we want to see is to put a system on there, whether it be a cellular system, a Wi-Fi system, or a VSAT system, that somebody else can access and control that. So it's a very serious thing. It's a very costly thing. And KVH and most of the other communication companies are, by law, we have to be able to control that and put security purposes. And we've done that with multiple layers of security in our systems.
Anybody else want to chip in on that? Or I'll go to the audience questions.
I'll just touch on the cybersecurity. It's people think of it as just like a virus and whatnot, like Steve was saying, but it's you know, on one side it is hackers are some of the smartest people in technology today, and it's going to be hard to stay in front of them. But there's another component to it, and that's the actual people coming on the boat or on the marina or your neighbor trying to pirate your Wi-Fi, or maliciously trying to get into your accounting or whatnot on the boat. And while there's no one silver bullet for that, there needs to be a cognizant effort by the boat owner, the crew, to have some type of protocols in place, best practices to do the best to ensure they're safe going forward. And we tell people when we're setting up networks, don't name your network after your boat. It's easy for people to walk down the marina and go, okay, there's Island Girl, and then try to log into her and try to guess passwords. Don't use passwords like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These things are very easy to defeat. And once someone's inside your network, depending on how sophisticated your boat is, they can cause you a lot of problems. I mean, we have some yachts that have, when you scan their network, there's 200 devices on a network between AV systems, navigation systems, vessel monitoring systems. And it's a Pandora's box once people are in there and what they can do.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. Here's one question from the audience. It says, I'd like to know if anyone in the group is currently working with OneWeb. Are there products in development from your companies that will be using this constellation once it is up and running? How do you think this will affect cost of data in the future?
So KVH works with several, or we're monitoring several different options, and we do work with them. We're looking into the future. We're always looking at what's going to be available. Some of those systems initially are really geared at land-based applications to bring the cost of internet in very remote locations down. When it first comes out, there's definitely great opportunity there. And when it first comes out, it's going to be good for land-based. For marine-based, it's going to be a little different, because with these different systems, they're using what they call LEO and MEO. So they're low Earth orbit and medium Earth orbit satellites, and there's multiples of them. In some cases, there's going to be thousands of mini satellites spinning around. They don't stay in one location. They're always moving. So you're not just tracking one satellite for that connection. You're going to have to be tracking multiple satellites for both transmit and receive of that data. And that's easy to do on a house or a fixed structure, or remotely out in the plains or out in the desert, where you can set up a couple antennas and nothing's moving, and they can track multiple satellites. But when you're on a vessel, that's not as simple to do. If you've got to be tracking multiple satellites for transmit and receive, we're not talking about the same characteristics as tracking one satellite. So it's definitely going to have a huge play in our future. It's not as close as some people may think, especially in the mobile market. But sure, land-based, it's going to bring the cost down. It's going to allow for people to have internet in very remote locations.
So this next question asks about Starlink in particular and specifically. SpaceX's low Earth constellation. Will that ever become a viable alternative for satellite-based internet on a boat?
So again, like I said, they're all going to have their place. Initially, not on a boat, because of the characteristics of what it's going to take and the sophistication of it. I think most manufacturers like KVH that are out there that build tracking systems, we're actually looking at how we can work with that, what we can do, how we can incorporate systems that we already have in our technology. So yes, absolutely, our engineers are looking at all different aspects of that. But again, it's not something that's around the corner. So a lot of people, that's one of those misconceptions. They think, well, I'll wait because next year this system's going to be up. It may be up. Most of it is up now. We're testing with it now, but it's not really geared towards that mobile market just yet.
Another question is, what is the difference between VSAT and FBB, fleet broadband?
Well, fleet broadband is a system that's been around a long time. It's just a different type of satellite communications. The cost is much higher. That's probably the biggest thing. As far as the data costs, it's probably in some cases 5 to 10 times more expensive than VSAT. VSAT is. VSAT's brought the cost way down. The speeds of fleet broadband is not up as high as what you can do. The bandwidth basically is not the same. So fleet broadband, we've been selling fleet broadband for many years and been a carrier in that. But VSAT has kind of taken that service over.
The question is, I have a legacy Wi-Fi extender amplifier router that will not connect to the newer 5 gigahertz standard hotspots. Are there any products that any of you know about that will connect to a marina's broadcasting at 5 gigs?
I mean, there's a number of companies making dual band Wi-Fi repeaters that bridge the vessel network to land. I mean, the 2 most popular here in South Florida is Aegean and also Wave Wi-Fi. We also use a lot of cellular systems from a company called PepWave that actually includes one in their system as well. All of them basically use similar technology where you've got 1 or 2 fixed antennas. Again, you need to keep the RF cabling short, so location is key. And it's possible to use both 2.4 and 5, depending on what's available in a marina. I mean, perfect example down in Bahia Mar, down in Fort Lauderdale. You can use both of those frequencies, but you're hard pressed to get 1 meg out of the 2.4 because the amount of boats using it. When you go to 5, your speed jumps to about 8 megs. And a lot of marinas, a lot of the larger marinas, that 5 gigahertz is a much better bandwidth to have. And unfortunately, the only solution is to step up to the newer technology.
Why don't we do one more? It's now, what, 3:10? This comes from a sailboat owner, captain, who has a KVH V3 HTS, plus Fleet 1 plus Iridium Go. He's planning to do a Pacific crossing in the next 24 months. First question he has, and there are 3. V3 does not have low-speed unlimited data option. Any hardware, software that could help convert high-speed to a limited low-speed mode?
So, well, the V3 HTS, that particular model strictly does what we call the high speed. So it's 5 megs down by 2 megs up. And that particular model, we did not include the dual channel like our V7 or V11. But again, we have tools built into it to be able to control that data, to be able to shut off certain categories so that you don't use the data unknowingly, like we talked about with our smartphone devices and things running in the background. Some of that is going to have to be done externally, controlling your devices, but obviously internally in our system, he's able to control some of that data by using the category controls. He can also do things like set up data allotments depending on how many people are going to be on the vessel. In his case, it probably doesn't sound like many people are going to be on board. And what he needs to use it for would be downloading weather files and basic communication. So a lot of that can be controlled on his end personally, both through his own equipment, meaning his smartphone, his tablet, or through using those category controls that we have built into our system.
And part 2 of his question has to do with compression software to compress data before transmitting.
John, I don't know if you have any thought on that as far as using something for compression, a third-party device that's able to compress some of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been years since we've really been asked for that type of a solution, though I understand the application. Typically our clients that are doing that kind of transits are usually living off the VSAT these days. Off the top of my head, I'm drawing a blank on someone that still offers a compression software like that. I'm sorry.
I'm reluctant to go any further. We're already 12 minutes beyond the 3 o'clock cutoff. So to be respectful of everyone's time, let's end the session. I believe the transcript from the Q&A will be available on the website, on KVH's website. So I want to thank everybody on the call. I'd like to thank the panelists very much for providing some what I consider to be excellent information that voters ought to be able to harness pretty quickly and well to use with their purchase decision. So thank you all again. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.